let us read from a great spiritual master, Ramana Maharshi, in this book, his spiritual teachings. We are in chapter 1, discussing the nature of who am I. We previously ended on the question of if reading books was useful. And to paraphrase, he said, they can be useful so long as they direct you to make your mind quiescent. A lovely word that is. But ultimately, your mind is not going to become quiescent simply by reading alone. The next question, perhaps the most important question: what is happiness? We all chase it, but what is it really? Ramana Maharshi says, happiness is the very nature of the self. Happiness and the self are not different. There is no happiness in any object of the world. We imagine, through our ignorance, that we derive happiness from objects. When the mind goes out, it experiences misery. In truth, when its desires are fulfilled, it returns to its own place and enjoys the happiness that is the self. How interesting is that answer? When we do experience pleasure from a gratified sense, it's only because our mind has gone out, achieved something, and returned to the self, which is happiness that you are. Similarly, in the states of sleep, samadhi, and fainting, and when the object desired is obtained or the object disliked is removed, the mind becomes inward tuned and enjoys pure self-happiness. Thus, the mind moves without rest, alternately going out of the self and returning to it. Under the tree, the shade is pleasant. Out in the open, the heat is scorching. A person who has been going about in the sun feels cool when he reaches the shade. Someone who keeps on going from the shade into the sun and then back into the shade is a fool. A wise man stays permanently in the shade. Similarly, the mind of one who knows the truth does not leave Brahman, the ultimate reality. The mind of the ignorant, on the contrary, revolves in the world, feeling miserable, and for a little time returns to Brahman to experience happiness. In fact, what is called the world is only a thought. The mind experiences happiness, and when the world appears, it goes through misery. You feel like you're right here in these sessions, for indeed, this book is very rare in that it wasn't penned by the one speaking. It's literally a transcription of a sangha that happened so many decades ago in India. So you can really hear the questioner's sincerity and the timelessness of the responses. Questioner replies, what is wisdom insight? The Sanskrit word is jnana drishti that they're inquiring about. remaining quiet is what is called wisdom insight. To remain quiet is to resolve the mind in the self. Telepathy, knowing past, present, and future happenings, and clairvoyance do not constitute wisdom insight. And thank you, likewise, dead girl. A very fascinating remark here, that spiritual powers, these are secondary to the power of being quiet. Now that is a very auspicious thing to do. What is the relation between desirelessness and wisdom? Desirelessness is wisdom. The two are not different. They are the same. Desirelessness is refraining from driving the mind toward any object. Wisdom means the appearance of no object. In other words, not seeking what is other than the self is detachment or desirelessness. Not leaving the self is wisdom. Well said, Gregor. Silence, the soundless sound that permeates all sound. 2 more questions and then the chapter ends. They're very short too. What is the difference between inquiry and meditation? Inquiry consists in retaining the mind in the self. Meditation consists in thinking that oneself is Brahman, the ultimate reality, Sat Chit Anandam, existence, consciousness, bliss. And lastly, the questioner asks, what is release? Inquiring into the nature of one's self that is in bondage and realizing one's true nature is release. So we end chapter 1 of the spiritual teachings of Ramana Maharshi. Very direct, non-dual. Tomorrow we may begin the 2nd chapter, which is simply called Spiritual Instruction. So I'll make a little dog ear and I'll minimize the book cover. I thank you for reading with me.